Okay, so here are the only problems you have to do. So we're going to look at number 1 together. And what we're going to do is we're going to draw a balanced bar where our equal sign is. We have n minus 7 equals 2. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to make sure we're trying to get this n on this side by itself. So right now we're subtracting 7. Well, if we want to put it on the other side of our balanced bar, we need to add 7. Because negative 7 plus 7 cancels out, we're left with just an n. And then we have 7 plus 2 on the other side, which gives us 9. And that's our final answer. And even if we check that from the original equation, if we do n minus 7 equals 2, replace the n with that 9, we have 9 minus 7 equals 2, which is 2 equals 2, and that's good. So that's what we're trying to do, is figure out the number, the variable or the letter is supposed to be. So I'm going to write my balance bar again, down my equal sign. And now I have negative 8n equals 80. Well, this negative 8n has secret multiplication happening. So if I want to get that n alone, because that's our goal, we're going to divide by negative 8 on both sides. Okay? Those cancel out. Our n is alone. So now we have 80 divided by negative 8, which gives us a negative 10. Looking at number 3 here, we have negative 14 plus b minus 29. Well, this negative 14 is the only thing attached or on the same side as my b, and it's being added. So we're going to minus this negative 14. But what happens when we see two negatives next to each other like this here is they become positive. So really we are adding 14 on both sides. Okay, so negative 14 and a positive 14 cancel out, or minus 14 plus 14 cancel out. We're left with b. Negative 29 plus 14 is a negative 15. All right, next up, we're going to draw our balance bar again. We have r over 8 equals a negative 6. Now, remember, fraction bars mean division. So if we're dividing by 8, for the r, we must multiply by 8 on both sides. Because a multiplied 8 and a divided 8 cancel out. We're left with just that r. Negative 6 times 8 is a negative 48. R is by itself, which is what we want, so that is our final answer. All right, next up we have some two-step equations, or where we have to do more than one move. Like this one we only added 14, this one we only had to multiply by 8, here we had to divide by a negative 8, and here we only had to add by a 7. So in this next bit, we're going to have to do a little bit more. So here we have 4 equals v over 5 plus 8. So the first thing we want to do is we want to get rid of any adding or subtracting that's on the side of our variable. And right now we are adding by an 8. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the opposite. So let's subtract 8 on both sides. These 8s with the variable cancel. We're left with v over 5. 4 minus 8 gives us a negative 4. Now our v is still not by itself, right? It's still got a fraction bar 5 here, which means divide by 5. So once more we'll do the opposite. We'll multiply by 5 on both sides. 5 times negative 4 is negative 20. And we have v by itself. So v is equal to negative 20. Next up, we have 163 equals negative 7 minus 10m. We're going to add that 7 first, because you want to get rid of any adding or subtracting first. This gives us 170. The 7s cancel out. We're left with a negative 10m. So be careful. That whole thing comes down. Negative 10m has secret multiplication, so we're going to divide by negative 10 on both sides of the equation. Our m is by itself. 170 divided by negative 10 is a negative 17. Okay? Now, the reason why we do it in this order is, let's check our work real quick. So we're going to write the original equation. And now we know that m is negative 17. So let's replace that m with negative 17. So we have negative 10. Now remember, secret multiplication is happening between 10 and m. So we must continue to do multiplication. Okay? Now, we are now simplifying or evaluating. So we have to do negative 10 times negative 17. So we have negative 7 plus 170. Negative 7 plus 170 gives us 163. And look at that. These are equal on both sides, and that's what we want. All right, let's look at number 7 now. Now, number 7 is kind of goofy looking because this time we have this like really long division bar. Okay. Now, what's crazy about this is, we've been adding or subtracting first, but this 10 here is also being divided by this 5. So we can't get rid of it really because it's still got a division bar attached to it. So we can't move it to the other side. So in this case, what we actually want to do is we want to multiply by 5 so we can get rid of that fraction. And remember, we do that on both sides. So this leaves us with 30. 6 times 5 is 30. And then we're left with 10 plus b. Now, next up we have 10 plus b. So to get rid of this 10, we are going to subtract because it's being added. We're left with b. 30 minus 10 is 20. Okay? And if I check my work, if I replace this b with 20, then 20 plus 10 is 30. And then since this is now 30, 30 divided by 5 is 6. So they would be equal. This next one here, we actually have 2 ways to solve this, but I'm going to stick with the way that's probably more normal of what we've seen. So we have 8 parentheses, negative 1 plus n. So if we have 8 parentheses, negative 1 plus n, we're going to multiply that 8 on both sides, or in the parentheses, right? Because we want to get rid of that. So we have negative 8. 8 times n is plus 8n equals negative 152. Okay, now we want to get rid of any adding or subtracting first. So we're going to add that 8 on both sides. We're left with 8n equals negative 152 plus 8 is negative 144. Then we are going to divide this 8 because remember we have secret multiplication here. And we're left with just an n, which is what we want. So negative 144 divided by 8 gives us a negative 18. And those are all the problems you have to do enrichment. Anything extra we did in class was just extra practice, but definitely do numbers 1 through 8. All right, have a good day.